Alright, I got this old round fender John Deere 110. It's in pretty rough shape. It's not seized. Tires are all still inflated. Pretty much everything moves on it. Everything seems to work. But there is no spark. I've tested the coil. The coil works. The spark plug was cross-threaded, so I'm going to be changing that thing out. But the points I'm thinking need to be worked on, so that's going to be my first step. Alright, just for ease, I'm going to take off the implement carriage, give it a pull and a twist. It just lifts off. Alright, next I'm going to take off this upright. So I have two bolts here to take off. I also got to take off the wiring for the coil. Alright, now these two on this end are 3/8. Make sure your battery is disconnected before you start touching this. This is a live right from your ignition. Now if you happen to touch a frame while you got that on, you can end up for a zap or throwing sparks at least, and you don't want to do that. Wreck your coil. Okay, now that I got my wires off, my positive and negative, I just give this a twist, pull it straight up. Now that's disconnected. That's my spark plug wire. Now I can undo the two bolts that hold this in place, and this whole coil and everything is going to come out in one piece. Alright, this could be done with a ratchet, but I have the tools, so I'm going to use them. It all comes out in one piece. Alright, now that that's out of the road, I come back in here, get nice and close. Under this cover here, that's where my points are. But this capacitor is not mounted properly. That's supposed to be mounted underneath this bolt right here. I don't know if you can see it. It's supposed to be underneath that bolt, not sitting here with a ground wire dangling in free air. So I'm going to take out the screws that hold this cover in place. I'll show you the points. Alright. Get the second screw out of here. Cover just comes off. Got a little hole in there for the wires to come through. Should only be 2 wires coming through there, not 3. This wire is not supposed to be in there. This is just supposed to be mounted to the block. And that gap is way too big. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. The gap here. That's always supposed to be 20 thousandths of an inch at the most. And I can see already that is bigger than 20 thousandths of an inch. And I haven't even turned the motor to see where that's going to line up. Of course I can't turn the motor over by hand. I need something on there to turn that motor over. Yeah, I'll pull the spark plug out so I have no compression. And then I'll be able to turn it by hand. Alright, I took that ground wire off. It was mounted here, but I figured out why they put that on there. This capacitor is not the correct capacitor for this machine. It is mounted, or it won't reach to where it's supposed to be mounted, so I have to go get a new capacitor. Okay, for taking off the points, I should have shown there's a screw right down here. Taking that one out, and there's a screw right here. Take the points out. And you got to pull them straight back. Right here, there's a little rod. That is what pushes your points open and close. Now if you look on the back end of here, I gotta take this screw out in order to take these wires off. This is obviously not the factory connection, so I'm gonna have to go to the store and get the proper condenser or capacitor, whichever you want to call it, and get that put together properly. Alright, $36 later, I have the proper condenser. There's the two condensers. The wire is a good 2 inches longer, if not a little more. Now it'll mount properly and bolt in. And of course, it's too narrow of a space to get a ratchet in there, so you got to do it with a wrench. Okay, now I got the capacitor mounted where it's supposed to be. End of the wire here. That's going to go onto the screw on the back of the points. And then I can mount my points in place. But it's supposed to be here and re-gap them. Alright, now if we look, we're right back to our same issue that we had before. Our gap between the points is too big. So we're going to have to loosen off this screw here. Put our feeler gauge in between. Then tighten that screw back up again in order to get our gap where it's supposed to be. But you got to remember, we have to keep pressure on it when we tighten it up. So I put my feeler gauge in between. I felt it push on there. I'm going to push tight on this side and tighten the screw down. Now if I pull my feeler gauge out, you see that gap is a lot smaller. That should be where I need it to be. The feeler gauge is putting a little bit of pressure on when I put it in there. That should be where it's supposed to be. Alright, now I'm just going to reverse the process a little bit. Put my cap back in place and continue my assembly. Alright, carry on. Put the stuff back together. This one is threaded. Yeah, make sure you put the right bolts in the right spot though. These have two different lengths of bolts. On mine, the shorter one came from the back side, so I'm gonna make sure I put that where it came from. I gotta get them started by hand, and then I'll use the machine to finish them off. Alright, time to hook up the coil again. Negative goes to the points. Positive goes to the battery. Oops, drop that washer. Figures. Sometimes it's handy to have a magnet around just to catch the little pieces when you drop them. These little nuts are a 3/8, by the way, on this machine. I'll be back. Alright, now I got those tightened down. Spark plug wire. That end goes to your coil, that end to your spark plug. Make sure you get it in there good and tight. Most of them will click in. This wire is a little bit long, so I'm going to end up putting a loop in it and throwing a zip tie on there. I don't want it touching metal anywhere else. There it is.